The Roman legion's evolution from the Punic Wars to the 5th century AD is not just the story of an army, but the story of how Rome itself rose, changed, and ultimately declined. Across these centuries, the Roman legionary and his armaments evolved from a citizen farmer with varied personal gear into a uniformly equipped professional soldier, and finally into a far more diverse, less standardized warrior of a crumbling empire. We begin in the 3rd century BC, at the time of the Punic Wars against Carthage. The Roman army was organized in the manipular system, a flexible formation that had replaced the older Greek-style phalanx. A legion had about 4,200 infantry divided into 30 maniples of roughly 120 men each, supported by allied troops and cavalry. This structure allowed the Romans to maneuver in smaller blocks, rather than a single massed front, giving them an edge over more rigid enemies. The early legionary was a citizen soldier, drawn from property-owning classes. Service was a duty of citizenship, not yet a long-term profession. Because men provided much of their own equipment, what a legionary carried varied significantly with his wealth and social class. The army was divided into lines. The velites were the light skirmishers, usually younger and poorer citizens. Their armaments were minimal, a small round shield or palmer, several light javelins, and a simple sword or dagger. Protective gear was often limited to a helmet, sometimes covered in animal skins, to stand out for identification. They relied on mobility and ranged attacks rather than heavy armor. The hastati formed the first line of heavy infantry. They typically wore a bronze helmet, sometimes adorned with feathers or crests, and a small cuirass such as a bronze breastplate, or sometimes no body armor at all if they could not afford it. Their main shield was an early form of the scutum, an oval or rectangular shield of wood covered in leather and metal. For offense, they carried a gladius, a short, thrusting sword about 60 to 70 centimeters long, and 2 pila, heavy throwing spears designed with a long, thin iron shank that bent on impact, disabling enemy shields and making them hard to throw back. Behind the hastati stood the principes, older and generally wealthier men. Their armament was more complete, a similar helmet, a more reliable cuirass, often chainmail or lorica hamata, and the scutum. Like the hastati, they carried the gladius and 1 or 2 pila. Their position in the second line meant they often bore the brunt of the decisive fighting after the hastati had engaged and worn down the enemy. The final line consisted of the triarii, veterans, and the oldest soldiers. They were equipped with long spears or hastae instead of pila and gladius as primary weapons, and they often wore high-quality armor, such as well-forged chainmail. Their shields were similar to those of the other heavy infantry, and their main role was to serve as a final reserve, stiffening the line if things went badly. The Roman phrase, "It has come to the triarii," symbolized a desperate situation. During the Second Punic War, particularly at catastrophic defeats like Cannae, the limitations and strengths of this manipular system became clear. Hannibal exploited Roman aggressiveness and their tendency to compress into dense formations. But Rome's flexible manipular structure allowed it to adapt and eventually overcome Carthage by learning from defeat, changing tactics, and leveraging its seemingly endless manpower. By the time Carthage was destroyed in 146 BC, the legion had proven itself as the most effective fighting system in the Mediterranean. Yet success brought new challenges. As Rome expanded and wars grew longer and farther from home, the old system of short-term citizen soldiers broke down. Many small farmers were ruined by long absences, and Rome struggled to find enough qualified recruits who met the property requirements. In 107 BC, Gaius Marius introduced reforms that fundamentally reshaped both the legion and the legionary. He abolished the property requirement, allowing the poorest citizens, the capitae censi, to enlist. The state now supplied standardized equipment. This was a revolution. Instead of a patchwork of gear based on personal wealth, legionaries were now armed and armored in a more uniform way. Under the Marian system and into the late Republic, the typical legionary's armaments became iconic. On his head, he wore a standardized iron helmet, often of the Montefortino or later Culus and Imperial Gallic types, complete with cheek guards and a neck guard at the back. This helmet gave good protection while allowing hearing and vision. On his torso, he commonly wore lorica hamata, chainmail made of thousands of interlocking rings, sometimes reinforced at the shoulders. Later, some might wear scale armor, or lorica squamata, made of overlapping metal scales stitched to a fabric backing. The legionary's shield evolved into the classic rectangular, curved scutum, large enough to cover much of the body. Made of layered wood with a central metal boss and a linen or leather covering, it was both defensive and offensive. In close combat, a legionary could use it to bash an opponent, then thrust with his sword. The primary weapon remained the gladius, particularly the gladius hispaniensis type, inspired by Iberian swords. This short sword, optimized for thrusting, but also capable of slashing, was deadly in tight formations. Before closing, each legionary carried and threw one or two pila, now more standardized, a heavy javelin with a wooden shaft and a long iron shank. On impact, the thin iron shank bent, making the weapon difficult to remove or reuse and often forcing the enemy to drop their shield. Additional personal gear included a pugio, a short dagger, utility items like a cloak, a marching pack with tools, rations, a cooking pot, and stakes for building fortifications. The Marian reforms turned legionaries into heavily burdened but self-sufficient soldiers, sometimes nicknamed Marius's mules for the loads they carried. These professional soldiers served for around 16 years at first, eventually stretching to 20 and even 25 years. They were paid a salary, given regular bonuses, and promised land or cash pensions upon retirement. This fostered deep unit cohesion and discipline, but also shifted loyalty from the state to the generals who secured these rewards. Armies of this type, commanded by men like Sulla, Pompey, and Julius Caesar, made it possible to wage civil wars on an unprecedented scale. Caesar's Gallic Wars offer a window into the late Republican legionary at his peak. His soldiers could march great distances in full gear, erect fortified camps nightly with ditches and ramparts, build bridges such as the famous Rhine crossings, and execute complex sieges, as at Alesia. The legionary's tools, pickaxes, shovels, saws, and stakes, were as crucial as his weapons. His armaments were not just for battle, but for constant construction, showing how the legionary was both warrior and engineer. With the fall of the Republic and the rise of Augustus, the first emperor, the legions were reorganized into a permanent standing army. Augustus reduced the number of legions, gave them fixed names and numbers, and established permanent bases along the frontiers. Legions such as the 10th Gemina and the 14th Gemina developed enduring traditions and pride. In the early empire, around the 1st and 2nd centuries AD, the Roman legion probably reached its highest level of organization and professionalism. A legion had roughly 5,000 men divided into 10 cohorts, the first being double strength. Each cohort had centuries commanded by centurions. The legion also had a small organic cavalry component, and was often supported by auxiliary units of non-citizen troops who brought specialized skills: archers, slingers, cavalry, and light infantry. The early imperial legionaries' armament is the image most people think of when they imagine a Roman soldier. His helmet, now often of the imperial Gallic or Italic type, had a ridged top, sturdy neck guard, reinforcing ribs, and decorated cheek pieces. His body armor in many legions was now the lorica segmentata, segmented plate armor made of curved metal strips fastened together with leather straps and buckles. It offered excellent protection to the chest, shoulders, and upper back while remaining relatively flexible, though chainmail and scale armor continued in use, particularly in other regions or among auxiliaries. His shield remained the rectangular curved scutum, now often emblazoned with legionary emblems and symbols such as lightning bolts, wings, or wreaths. This shield was central to Roman tactics, forming protective walls and the famous testudo, or tortoise formation, in which overlapping shields protected soldiers from missiles in front, above, and at the sides. As for weapons, he still carried the gladius, usually the Mainz or later Pompey types, with a shorter, handier blade. The gladius was worn on the right side, suspended from a belt. He also bore at least one pilum, still a heavy javelin optimized to disrupt enemy shields and ranks before hand-to-hand combat. A pugio dagger remained standard as a backup weapon and general tool. On the march, the legionaries' kit included a large pack, tools, spare clothing, cooking gear, rations, and personal items strapped to a carrying pole, along with entrenching equipment and wooden stakes for building palisades. Legionaries of this period were trained relentlessly. They drilled with wooden weapons heavier than their real arms to build strength. They practiced forming and reforming ranks, hurling pila in unison and closing to fight with the sword in tight formation behind their shields. They trained in swimming, marching, and constructing camps. This discipline, combined with standardized, well-maintained equipment, made them the most formidable infantry in the ancient world. As the empire expanded, these soldiers built roads, bridges, forts, and walls. Monuments like Hadrian's Wall in Britain and the siege earthworks at sites such as Masada highlight how integral their tools and engineering skills were to imperial power. By the 3rd century AD, however, the empire entered a period of severe crisis. Continuous frontier wars, internal usurpations, economic instability, and new, more mobile enemies forced changes in the army. The traditional heavy legionary, with his large scutum and lorica segmentata, faced foes like Sarmatian and Persian cavalry and more agile Germanic warbands. Gradually, the equipment of the legionary shifted. The lorica segmentata began to disappear, partly because of its maintenance demands and partly due to changing tactical needs. Chainmail and scale armor, more flexible and easier to repair in the field, became more common again for both infantry and cavalry. The scutum shrank and changed shape. Instead of the large curved rectangle, soldiers increasingly carried smaller, oval or round shields that allowed more mobility and were suitable for mixed infantry and cavalry tactics. Weapons also evolved. The traditional pilum fell out of widespread use, replaced by various spears and lighter javelins. The primary sword for many soldiers became the spatha, a longer blade originally popular with cavalry. The spatha's extended reach was more useful in looser formations and against cavalry-heavy enemies. Late Roman infantrymen might carry a spatha, a spear, and several throwing darts or javelins such as the plumbata. a lead-weighted throwing dart that could be hurled before contact to disrupt enemy formations. Reforms under emperors like Diocletian and Constantine in the late 3rd and early 4th centuries reorganized the entire army. The old model of large, fixed legions was broken up. Two broad categories of forces emerged: the limitanei, frontier troops settled along the borders who often farmed and soldiered part-time, and the comitatenses, mobile field armies that could move quickly to respond to crises inside the empire or along its frontiers. The legion in this period was now often a smaller unit of perhaps 1,000 to 1,500 men, sometimes even fewer, rather than the classic 5,000-man formation of earlier times. Equipment varied more by region and recruitment source. Soldiers might be issued helmets of simpler design, mail or scale shirts, smaller shields painted with unit emblems, and combinations of spears, spathi, and javelins. Archers and cavalry became increasingly important, and many field armies had a significant mounted component. By the 4th and 5th centuries, recruitment heavily involved non-Roman and non-Italian peoples. Germanic and other barbarian warriors joined as federated troops, or foederati, fighting under their own leaders but in Roman service. Many of these men adopted Roman-style equipment, but they also brought their own traditions: round shields, long spears, and different fighting styles. The image of a Roman legionary in the West became more fluid, a mix of Roman kit and provincial or barbarian gear, sometimes still disciplined and effective, but no longer the uniform, heavily armored infantrymen of the early empire. The individual armaments of the 5th century legionary thus reflected this change. A Western Roman soldier in this era might wear a simple iron helmet, a mail shirt, carry an oval shield with a brightly painted pattern, and fight primarily with a spear and spatha. His backup weapons might include a dagger or seax. He was likely supported by, and sometimes indistinguishable from, allied Germanic warriors fighting alongside him. The standardized scutum, the distinctive lorica segmentata, and even the universal gladius were largely things of the past in the West. As central authority weakened, so too did the system that had once guaranteed regular supply, pay, and standardized armaments. Local commanders and barbarian leaders increasingly controlled recruitment and provisioning. The armies that defended the Western Empire in its final decades were Roman in organization and symbols, but increasingly non-Roman in composition and equipment. When Romulus Augustulus was deposed in 476 AD, marking the formal end of the Western Roman Empire, the legions that had once been the backbone of Roman power no longer existed in their classical form. What remained were regional armies, mixed in ethnicity and equipment, led by powerful warlords who owed only loose allegiance to the idea of Rome. Yet the legacy of the Roman legion and its legionary endured. The principles of standardized equipment, disciplined infantry tactics, organized ranks, and integrated engineering left a permanent mark on military history. Terms like legion, cohort, and centurion survived, and the Eastern Roman, or Byzantine Empire, carried forward many Roman military traditions in transformed ways. From the manipular citizen soldiers of the Punic Wars with their varied personal kit, to the professional Marian legionaries equipped by the state with gladius, pilum, scutum, and mail, to the early imperial soldiers in segmented armor and standardized gear, and finally to the late Roman warrior with mail shirt, oval shield, spear, and spatha. The evolution of the legionaries' armaments mirrors the transformation of Rome itself. It began as a city of citizen farmers defending their homeland, became the center of a vast empire with a highly professional army, and ended as a fading power whose soldiers, once the best equipped in the world, now struggled to maintain the old standards in a changed and more dangerous world.